Welcome back to FlowState. Today we're on a trek next to the Atlantic Ocean. We'll see how far we get. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody has been crushing their week, getting everything that they're looking to get done, loving life, happy, connected, grounded, present, living to your highest potential. This is what we do. We bridge the gap. We support each other. We connect with one another through actionable strategies, through engaging with the content by leaving comments, asking questions, getting in it, supporting, and amplifying. That's really what it's all about. As a collective, we can do this so much more powerfully than on our own. And FlowState is all about an open dialogue of insight, sharing, knowledge, how to uplift and amplify every moment of your day. So this is a new location for us. This is brand new. We're experiencing this together. And in about 3.9 kilometers, we'll be reaching this area. We'll see how things progress. I only have one battery. Hopefully I can smash this episode before it dies. So let's talk about the idea of win-win versus win-lose and how we can apply this to all aspects of our life, personal, business. You know, that also leads me to another interesting topic of like bifurcation of identity through personal and work. I really don't see that as being applicable in my life. I show up as Eric and I show up in the same way in my personal life that I do in my professional life, and they're really not separate. And if I remember, we should talk about this a little bit later. So now, let's go back to win-win, win-lose. It's a very interesting and very powerful concept. So, win-win is essentially where all parties involved benefit mutually from whatever is being proposed. Win-lose is where one group in a proposed outcome reaps greater benefit than the other group. It may seem obvious just laying it out, but we're going to talk about the details, the nuance behind how this win-win philosophical approach to life really can uplift the experience for you and for the people that you're, let's say, engaged with in some capacity. So let's start with win-win, right? Let's start with a personal scenario where, let's say, we're looking at it from the perspective of a family and where there's multiple people involved, more than two. And let's say the scenario is a movie night with the family. Hold on one second here. Hola.
Hola.
Buena.
Little dog. Okay, so movie night. Somebody proposes a film, and maybe let's say there's 4 people involved, right? 2 or 3 of the 4 are into it, but then the 4th, not so much. And the concept of win-win, how it applies to this, would be that everybody would need to be in agreement in order for the activity to take place. Because if, let's say, 3 people are in agreement and 1 person isn't, and then that person basically concedes, it's really a win-lose. It's a win for the 3 people, it's a loss for the 1 person. And in this context, the overall experience of the night is going to be diminished by the simple fact that 1 person is, I'm going to use this word, suffering, because it's not the thing that they want to do. So if there was some form of mutual agreement where there could be another film selected that would be enjoyable for everybody to watch, the overall experience of the night will be intrinsically better, because the energy in which people are showing up for that experience is going to be in alignment with the thing that they actually want. So what happens in the situation where, let's say, there's 3 people out of the 4 that enjoy the film, but the 4th person is not really into it? I would advocate for either one of 2 things. Figuring out a film that is going to be enjoyed by all, or choosing an activity that is going to be enjoyed by all people. So that means possibly changing, sorry, I'm a little out of breath here. This is so cool. Possibly changing the trajectory of the evening and saying, hey, because we can't come to a decision or a choice where the movie is acceptable to all parties, then maybe we do something else. How about this board game? And then everybody is like, yes, we all love this. Let's play that, or whatever. And I think part of this structure in the long term is really more of a philosophical approach to ensuring that on a very basic level, the collective energy is looked at as a higher purpose than any one individual. And this is true for business as well. And I think with business, there's so much emphasis on win-lose. And in terms of a sustainable model, it never really works out. It may take a while for things to play out, but ultimately, something that is good for all parties involved is good for the bottom line of the business if you're looking at it from that perspective. Because you want your customers to be not only happy, but speaking on your behalf in a positive way, which is the best form of marketing, and speaking their benefit to be able to solve problems for other people on your behalf. And you don't get this outcome if it's a win-lose kind of adversarial construct. I think it's a really interesting exercise to try the next time you're engaged in this kind of conversation, opportunity, business opportunity, personal opportunity, what have you. So, wow, this is such a fucking awesome location here. Just want to, I don't know, it's hard to see. I'm in this massive valley here. Some more people. Hola, buenos días. I wonder where this goes. Oh, there's people down there too. I'm gonna take a quick picture. I'll be right back. So the next time you and your family, you and your partner are getting down to Netflix and chill, or movie night, or fucking barbecue, family meal, anything, board game, experience. It's true for all things where there's a group that's being asked for a collective decision to be made. I think this is a very powerful exercise. And the openness and the willingness to then have the courage and leadership to then say, well, if we can't all agree on this outcome, then may I propose a different outcome, a different experience, a different strategy, a different opportunity to then leverage into a situation where, as a collective, you are all reaping the benefits. Everybody wins in this context. So this, to me, I find particularly interesting, and is something that has been on the top of my mind as of late, something that I am working on myself to be able to have a better all-around experience with my family, friends, and different scenarios in which there's a group effort to do something together. Because once we start thinking about it, the collective energy as positive, where everybody's included, and therefore showing up with, let's say, greater intention, greater openness, greater connection, you have such a compounding effect of energy in positive reinforcement, as opposed to the one or two people in the group kind of not really enjoying themselves, or possibly resenting the outcome because they weren't voicing their needs the way that they wanted to. And then there's all this negative coupling of self-talk that's not going to end well for that individual. And then the worst part is, most of the time with a social engagement, they're then checked out and then doing something maybe physically present, but mentally gone. So if you've been dropping into these episodes and or know anything about me, I'm very much focused on presence, the present moment being really the only concrete thing that we ever have, and the continuous practice of realignment in our everyday life to be able to amplify the experience that we have so that we can be more connected, more purpose-driven to the thing that's right in front of us, as opposed to living in a fantasy state. Man, this is so cool. These rocks. Definitely going to be bringing my family back here. As a great activity to do together. My dog would also like this. Woo. It's wild up here. All right, so let me catch my breath. So there's another example I'll share about win-win as it relates to business. And it comes from a passage in a book that talks about this concept. So there was two parties. One business that had a contract with another that was about to start. And the business that was offering their services was a software company to a bank. And that business was on the verge of collapse. They weren't doing well financially. And this contract really meant something, not only in terms of their ability to stay afloat, but also recurring business. But the bank was going through this transition period and wasn't quite ready for it. And the CEO was having a frank conversation with the software company that basically was expressing concern and knowing that the opportunity may not have been the appropriate time for this big shift because they were getting some pushback internally. So the software company, this is a very much succinct version of the story. So the software company CEO said, look, he believes so much in this win-win concept that said, we have a contract, but this is what I'm gonna do, which is I'm gonna remove the contract, and I hope that in the future, when you're ready, we can do business again. So it was for $80,000, I think. Then 3 months later, the bank came back and said, okay, we're ready, and signed a $280,000 deal with them. And that was parlayed into more business in the future. So certainly, if the software company was looking at win-lose, they would have forced their hand, and the bank would have either moved forward at the time, or they would have started legal action. Certainly within their right, because they had an agreement. So, in the outcome of the win-lose, the software company would have gotten that contract, but it most certainly could have ended up being the end of their business relationship. And also one that was started off on a contentious foot. Even if the bank was obliged to go forward, it still puts like kind of not the best energy, not the best taste in your mouth. You want to go into business with people who are excited to be in business with you on all levels without any problems. So anyways, the point is, now it's true that the bank could have not come back, but the bank also needed to update their software services. And so the good faith presentation of win-win by the software company really was the catalyst for not only a massive a differential in contract, right? You went from 80 to 200 and something thousand. I think I said 250. Whew. We came from all the way over there. Wow, it's so cool up here. Gorgeous. And then, so there's all the additional profit from that. It's a much bigger contract. And then there was recurring business after that. So it's just a positive outcome to what otherwise could have been a contentious negative outcome. All from operating from the perspective of win-win. And it's true for the family dynamic as well. When everybody's happy as a collective, the output of whatever you're doing is going to be so much more enjoyable. Now, we can always, go down a path of questioning and just like, man, saying, well, that worked out this way in this context, but it may not have been this. And that's true. But if you're committed to a philosophical approach to life that is really about the community well-being, where everybody gets benefit, there's profit on all sides, there's solutions to challenges on all sides, and the experience is that much better. Over time, that compounds into goodwill that then metastasizes into more goodwill and more output. And then because of that, there's greater room for opportunity and growth on a personal level and a business level. More people keep coming back because they know that not only are you going to show up, sorry. Not only are you going to show up and do the thing that you said you're going to do, but you're going to take their perspective into consideration. And the best companies are always operating from this perspective. And the ones that you loathe and hate are never operating from this perspective. And it's ultimately a net loss across the board for everyone. Most importantly, the company. Short-term thinking is always trumped by long-term strategic planning. Again, grounded in core values. I'm always going to be coming back to that. Core values of a business, core values of an individual. The grounding force that keeps you going in a straight line. I mean, it's never a straight line, but it's a line being guided by big, bright lines locking you into a path with some room for deviation, of course, but never so far off that you don't know where, in which direction you're heading in. Woo, man. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to physical vitality training, just a little update on my journey and maybe some opportunities to leverage for your journey as it relates to fitness in this segment. So I got back into weight training more seriously again about 2 years ago. And it's been an incredible journey of consistency, ups and downs with regards to my body weight, my body fat composition, just a whole roller coaster. And also making gains, going up and down with vacations and holidays and emotional stress, and how that has so much of an impact on, man, fucking kicking my ass right now. So I've done a lot of different strategies, different approaches to how I'm training in the gym, how frequently, what kind of splits. And in this moment, I have really sunk my teeth into every other day training. So this has been really, really nice. It gives me enough time to recover in between really hard sets for my split, which is basically 3 upper body focused training days and 2 lower body training days. And I split them, so it'd be like lower body, upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. So there's obviously some nuance there. How I am training, you know, there's a push, pull, and upper body sequence for all upper body. And then there's specific legs, and then there's lower body for the 2 lower body days. One that includes some core work and stuff as well. So I really enjoy this because it's not like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's rest, Thursday, Friday, Saturday split. It's really not as much about the days of the week as it is just training every other day. And the benefits I have found, and why I'm speaking about this, and why I would advocate you trying this, is because it restructures your approach to a week, and when you're doing things. So if you're able to leverage this kind of pattern, I think it's quite interesting. And what it does on a psychological level is that it really like breaks down the concept of like a Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. It's just, it removes this from your brain as it relates to training. This may not be the case for everybody based on their lifestyle and work and stuff like that, or during the school year if you have kids, and how that changes things, where you do certain things on, let's say, Saturday and Sunday. But for me, it really is more of a fluid approach to training, because I'm then stripping away the constraints of, let's say, allocating a certain portion of time per week to these days of training, and just moving in a more fluid way. Sorry, I'm catching my breath and I feel like we're at the top. I feel like the view, oh, fucking cool. Ready for this? Do you hear it? Okay. Oh yeah. Open ocean. I guess the road keeps going. Wow. So cool. I'm gonna catch my breath. So, using this as a vehicle for breaking up the monotony that is so much ingrained in our society by anchoring something that you do every other day, regardless of what day of week it is, has been interesting. And at first it was weird because I trained on Sunday. I don't normally train on Sunday, and it felt more like a Monday. You know, if you know what I mean, like how some days there are just things that are the undertone of the normality of that day, like Sunday is, you know, sleeping in or doing different things around the house that you don't normally do on a Monday, let's say. And because this is going to offset the consistency sink of like, I train every day on Monday, it is going to alternate. So some days you're training on Sunday, some days you're resting on Sunday. Same thing for Monday, Tuesday. So it's going to be alternating every like 2 weeks. You'll be doing Sunday, and then the alternate would be on Monday. But if you're less focused on keeping the rigidity of that daily calendar synced up to when you train, there's this feeling after the offset sets in of, well, this doesn't feel like a Sunday, this feels like a Tuesday or whatever. There's this feeling of like you're there's like a dissolving of this concept of the days of the week in a way. And especially in the context of the time of year when kids are not in school, because there's clearly a Monday through Friday operating schedule that is pretty rigid in most places. And then there's different things that happen on the weekend. But as it relates to the individual who's participating in this kind of structure, there's a weird emotional detachment, like disillusion that happens, or disassociation, it's not disillusion, disassociation between the structure of a week as it then undulates between the days of the week and when you normally did things. And I know that's a little like esoteric and whatever, but I really am in like a really interesting place mentally, primarily because of this disconnect that has happened over the past couple of weeks. And we'll see how things progress, but it's really just an interesting concept, I think, to play around with. And then also in terms of performance, I think it really amplifies your performance, because I realized that I was overtraining sometimes, where I just felt like it was just too much. And I'm doing, you know, pretty hard sets, moving a lot of weight. Like for example, yesterday was like 20 22 or 23,000 kilos total weight. And so that's kind of like the more or less the average, whether it's upper body, lower body. I'm really pushing hard and I just need more time to recover. And I find that I'm not able to perform as well if I'm stacking back to back. Now, there was a time where I was just grinding it out and doing less volume, but I think I'm more interested now to try to amplify my efforts, recover effectively. And so with regards to the lower body split, it's really every 3 training days. So there could be like 5 days in between the leg day or lower body training. And the last time I trained, it took about that much time for me just to recover from moving all that weight to where I felt really in a position to push myself again to make some gains. So something for you to consider, something to play around with. I think the more you train, the more you have to also come up with fun and creative things to do to keep things fresh and to trick your body as well. Like, you know, there's, I think, a lot to be said about consistency with certain movements, but then every once in a while changing up, like for example, barbell incline press could be swapped for dumbbells, you know? Same chest exercise, but man, does it hit different, you know? So just as an example, or hack squat versus barbell squat and so on and so forth. Whew. Pretty awesome up here. I'm grateful to be able to have this experience, and it was just kind of on a whim to be able to, hey, come out here, record, finding new things, discovering new places. This island is full of cool stuff. Let's see what's happening up here. Oof. Oh boy. Whoa. Oh, there's an amazing beach down there. I'm gonna take another quick picture. All right, back at it. Took a little moment to myself. Just wanted to experience the view. So, let's keep going a little bit further. Whew. Also had an opportunity to catch my breath. Can't be all fucking winded trying to have a conversation. So, I spoke about win-win, win-lose as a catalyst to support people as a collective. We spoke about training splits, training volume, how we can leverage this to possibly disassociate ourselves from the rigidity of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday situation. And hola. Hola. Oh, wow, keeps going and going. And now I think we should talk about the idea of core values, because it really is the thing that locks us in. We've spoken about this. 12. Huh. Man, this is super nice up here. We've spoken about this basically on every episode for good reason, because it is so foundational to the way we choose to show up with ourselves, with the world around us, and especially when there's no one around, how we're living up to a higher standard that keeps us locked in and focused on realizing our goals and our ambitions and our dreams, and taking care of other people to enrich the lives of those people as well as ourselves in a way that really is just so rewarding. And this was, for me, the most important aspect of the growth blueprint, because after vitality, it is the foundation for which everything else is aligned to. Whew. Man, wonder how much further this goes. I think this one is 9 kilometers now that we're past this. All right, just super cool. Okay, I think I'm going to turn around here. So, the process of figuring out your values is definitely an intensive one, but also one that provides such depth and clarity to our mind and the actions that then are based off of those values. The alignment of goals that nest on top of those values are so much more powerful, because when everything is in alignment, when there's a grounding force to your actions driven by clarity, purpose, of course, vitality, you're going to be able to realize whatever it is that you want in your life. Anything is possible when your actions are always in alignment with the objective. Now, part of this is to enjoy the process more than anything. It's less about the destination. This is kind of a cliche thing, but there's so much power to that. For the simple reason that if we're too focused on the outcome, which inevitably will happen, then what next, right? There's nothing there of real substance to then ground us in, let's say, the infinite game of life, as opposed to some short-term benefit to what really is a lifetime worth of experiences. So if you have a different philosophical approach to objectives, goals, and how they're merely stepping stones for a greater, more impactful journey, you can then get more granular and specific about the various stages of that journey. And when you do that, you get a lot more clarity, a lot more precision in how you approach opportunities that present themselves, whether you find them to be truly in alignment with yourself, family obligations, personal hobbies, whether they're fitness related ones or wanting to learn a new language, whatever, learning how to cook, how much time you're willing to allocate to that in pursuit of your goals, where you are required to make choices that are prioritizing those objectives versus other ones. So you're not sacrificing something for something else, right? The word sacrifice literally means to kill off. You're not doing that, because when you're in alignment with your core values, with aligned goals, there's no killing off of things, because it's not something that you even take into consideration, because it's not something that you ever really were considering in the first place. Now, there are situations where you may be presented with this scenario that the opportunity looks like it's in alignment. Looks like it's in alignment with your goals, but is really a distraction. And that requires a little bit more conscious effort in choosing the thing that best suits your vision for where you want to go. But in general, when you're so locked in, when you're focused on reading your mantra every day, grounding yourself in your values, knowing which direction to go in, there's very few situations where you're having to consider multiple options, because you really only have one option, and they kind of dissolve into obvious choices that then requires less brain power, because you're not really making those considerations. Perfect example of this is like having a minimalist approach to fashion, which I believe I do. So an example of this is I have a stack of just plain black t-shirts, and I have a stack of different colored t-shirts, including white. I guess white's not a color, but anyways. Same thing for my shorts and pants. I have a few basic neutral colored shorts, and I have all of my clothing brand clothes. So that's kind of a different thing. But the point is that no matter what I grab, it doesn't matter, because it all works together. So I don't have to think about anything. It's like the jeans and a t-shirt, and the t-shirt is always the same. Super easy. You have like 5 pairs of jeans, they're all the same. And yes, a little boring maybe, but you can always have a drawer of flair, and all the flair more or less works together with all the different colors and combinations, sunglasses, whatever the case. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that it may seem like such a mundane thing, but for anybody that has a large wardrobe of stuff, they understand that it does require some compute power to be able to choose what garments you're going to be putting on. And if you're really into fashion, you know that it takes up quite a bit of compute power. But that's also a choice, and that may be in alignment with your values. And if so, then it's part of your process every day that becomes meditative, because then, just like practicing, being in practice of any skill, there's a creative outlet to it. There's one that brings meaning to your life and then gets coupled with all kinds of different emotional cues that support you in the way that you want to be supported. There was times in my life where I was like super into fashion and all kinds of craziness, and it took a little bit of time to get together. It was like choosing the whole thing, and it was fun. But then I just simplified the process to better serve my interests, and that's being dynamic. That's not being so rigid that when things evolve as they naturally do, that you then are playing with it in a way, you're interacting with it in a way that is more, let's say, childlike, with a sense of curiosity and wonder, and also approaching it from a scientific way. Like, when I was talking about the training splits, how you feel, how you can then leverage different ideas to then increase and amplify performance. It's all a matter of leveraging and testing, because when we're so rigid, and this is different than getting locked into core values, which are kind of the undercurrent of which everything else is built, which I believe after you've done the work should be very rigid, unless they stop serving your interests. And if you've done the work correctly, this is something that's going to take years to evolve, because if it's something that you find is super interchangeable, like from one moment to the next, depending on how you feel, then you really haven't done the work, you haven't invested the time, and haven't been honest with yourself in developing what the values mean to you and how you're choosing to operate in the world. It's a really big deal. And look, at the end of the day, you have core values, whether you want them, like it or not, or have chosen them. My perspective is that you're better off choosing them and living by them on your own free will than having them be imposed onto you by society, by your parents, by the people closest to you. It's a big fucking deal to lock that shit in. And it really makes the difference between having a life that is uniquely yours or one that is simply a reaction of the world around you. Taking extreme ownership over every detail that you have control over to be the catalyst that effectively frees you to do what you want in a way that serves your interests, so you can support and connect with others more deeply. That to me is a sense of freedom that is unrivaled by monetary means or job or, life situation, whatever the case. This is available to everyone. It's a matter of a structure that gets you from point A to point B. And the Vitality course, I believe, does that. It does it with clarity, efficiency, and it's not about the kind of like emphasis on the output as it relates to me. It's about, feels like there's only one way up, one way down, right? I hope so. Okay, there's a path over there. All right. Whew. I do not remember this. Anyways. It's also not uncommon that I get kind of disoriented. So this was one of the biggest things for me, that when I kind of landed on this as the foundation to everything, it was just like, wow, so much clarity, so much room for growth and just freedom within. Sorry, I am feeling like we need to go. Okay, anyways, we'll see what happens. Okay, good, there's a sign there. So much room for clarity and just freedom, and there's like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders once you're really in alignment. And then it takes practice. You need to be in practice to be able to connect and ground yourself with your values. And it's a daily thing. You have to do it every day. And it may not feel like much is happening in the first little while, but then it's taking that to the next level. And embodiment is so important to being able to leverage what it means to live in alignment with your core values, and not being a reaction to extrinsic factors. You are in control of how you choose to show up. And it's either going to be as a reaction to your extrinsic world, or it's going to be under your stewardship. If you think about all the input that we have to contend with on a daily basis, it's crazy. Fucking, especially if you live in a city. You know, marketing alone is just out of control, right? Everybody is vying for your attention. Everyone is trying to push something on someone else all the time. And it may be to their benefit, and it may not be. It may be with good intentions, or it may not be. It doesn't matter, because the purpose of it is to connect people to the output of what the advertisers are trying to do. And that is crazy, because it's like everybody's doing it. You just walk outside in a street in a city and you're being smashed with information, and it can be so overwhelming that you then kind of turn everything off. So sorry. And so what happens when you do that is you're essentially taking in all of the information. Okay. Chimianda, Cruz del Carmen. I wonder though, I don't think we made it to Chimianda. I don't know. Maybe next time. Be curious to know. So what happens is, when you're being overstimulated at such a high level of frequency, is that you start absorbing unconsciously all of this input, right? Which is like how advertising really works. It's not about any one thing in particular, it's about a combination of things. And so this is why the basis of core values is, in a way, your force field to things that are not in alignment with what you have chosen to be your compass for your life. because you're being manipulated, and it's not a choice. It's just a fact. And every time you drive by a billboard, you're being manipulated. Every time you watch a movie, you're being manipulated. Turn on the TV, go to a restaurant, look at some clothing stores. If you've ever been into IKEA, you know that the way in which the rooms are set up are designed to instill deep emotion in you, connecting you to the idea of home, quote unquote, family, and so, I mean, look, I feel it. Anytime I go into an IKEA, into the section, the curated home section, I have this and I'm aware that this is happening, this melancholic kind of emotional yearning for home, even though it's not even about the stuff or even the designs or the furniture or whatever. It's just this deep sense of home and loss in a way for me, primarily because I went to boarding school and I was so young. And so there's something in me that gets triggered. And every time I'm there, I'm like, I feel it. It's like this thing, but it's also something that I think is done intentionally, the way that they curate the spaces to instill this kind of undertone of emotion. And that's manipulation. That is the desired output for them to be able to sell more product, right? It's good. It's good business strategy. It also, I could see it as being maybe potentially beneficial as a win-win, because then that feeling of completeness, the feeling of home, is something that I believe everyone is either creating for themselves when they are designing their spaces, or looking to, here's another example, Christmas or any holiday that has been traditionally something that you and your family have done for a very long time. Or when you go back to your parents' house, the house that you happen to grow up in, if that's something that you had, then you are going to feel a sense of home, but also a sense of loss. It's this really bizarre state, because even as adults, and it's like you grow up, certainly, but there's still this connection to where you were when you were young and playing, or going to your grandparents' home when you were young. It's like every, however often that was, and then you'd go into the basement, into the workshop area, or whatever it is for every individual, or the kitchen, or in the tool shed where you used to go out and you were in your own little universe, and there's just this foundational feeling that pops up every once in a while, or smells. This tripped me out. For a while, we were living in a different part of the island, next to a golf course, and in the summertime, we would spend time at our house that was also next to a golf course, and there was a certain smell when the temperature was right, and a lot of factors needed to be right to create that smell. And I would get whiffs of it, and I would be teleported back to that childhood, and it was just flooding my brain with emotion and just a feeling that is so ingrained in my body and brain on a visceral level, not just a memory. It's like a core feeling memory. It's not just, oh, I had this amazing memory of having this one experience. It's something that was repeated. Or another one would be, I grew up in Montreal. My grandparents, my father's side, lived in New York. Every time we would go there, the first morning waking up, going outside, I could smell the pollution, but it was kind of like this sweet smell, which is kind of weird. But anyways, there were some times that when we were far, far north in Quebec and would come back to Montreal, you would have that same feeling. Like any kind of, like Montreal is less polluted than New York, so you had that smell back then. And then when we left and went further north, when we would come back to Montreal, that smell would kind of permeate just, a moment, and then it disappears. But it's that triggering of the core memory of the core emotional state that you were in at the time. And it's the same feeling that you get in very specific environments, but it's all a manipulation. It's like pulling on your heartstrings. It's, a leverageable idea that is then global as it relates to our marketing and advertising and like the feeling. It's all about instilling emotion in people. So my point is this: you're being constantly marketed to. It's not a choice. It's not an option. It's, people who say, oh, advertising doesn't work on me. That's not how that works. Just, it isn't. You are not impermeable to it. It's not about any one thing that you happen to see that you remember or don't remember or whatever. It's the perpetual cycle of stimulation that's being projected on society by everyone. It's your parents, it's your coworkers, it's your boss, it's your brother, sister, whatever. It's everything. It's your children showing you new music that you never even knew existed, but then somehow has like 4 billion plays on whatever, So the only way to ensure that this doesn't leach into your life, that this doesn't become something that you are then not aware of, is to ground yourself in your values. Because by doing something so foundational, you are essentially closing the door on things that are not in alignment with that. And that is a good thing. That is a powerful place to be. That is really, it's like a second dimension within your brain of understanding and clarity. Now, you have to, of course, live up to that standard. You have to take considerable effort to make sure that you're doing the work that's in alignment with that. And you have to be aware and open enough to understand that when you're not in alignment with that has consequences. And it's all about showing up and practicing. It's all about committing and understanding that when we are locked in to the things that support us and propel us forward in the direction that we're choosing to go in, how unbelievably powerful that is. That is the difference between realizing your goals in a time frame that seems almost unimaginable, or taking the long road to get there, if ever. And again, it's not about the destination. It's not about the output of it. And people that are focused too much on the output and or the end result really miss out on the richness of life and the process, which is the thing that you're living in. It's so very seldom the output of the effort that is the thing that gets celebrated. Certainly, you can attach monetary outcome to different outputs, and that's wonderful and great, if it's positive, of course. But it's not about that moment, because then there's always the next thing, right? So it's not even about, it's like, oh, when I achieve this, then this. But reframe it. It's about the nuance, enjoyment of the process that is the celebration. It's the showing up every day, whether you had a quote unquote good experience or mediocre experience, or it just wasn't working that day or not. It's not about any one day. It's about that consistently. It's about consistently showing up and being in alignment with your actions, your thinking, to be able to enjoy the actual thing that you're doing and not just this idea of an outcome. Because the outcome is never as great as one thinks it is, because you tend to build things up in your mind about the benefit of it, but then it fades very quickly. It's like you got a bonus, so then you choose to buy a car with it, and that car is going to be awesome for a while, but then it's just going to be your baseline, and then it's like dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. But if you keep operating like that, it's never enough, never going to be good enough. Nothing is going to ever feel you're going to be, it's like essentially a drug addict kind of mentality. You're always looking for that next hit, that next rush. Or extreme sports people are kind of like this. Unless you really can get locked in, and is less about the output of the effort and more about the effort itself. Right? So it's taking a hit a little bit on that kind of like the output driving the motivation, right? Where you get this kind of exhilarating rush of, you know, making a really crazy trade or something, and there's big profit or loss even, or gambling or whatever. And going back and tapping into the actions, the thinking behind it, the process, the experience itself, because that is the thing, that is reality. It's not about the next swipe, the dopamine hit, the dopamine hit, the dopamine hit, or whatever. It's because if it's something truly aligned, then the output is going to be duplicatable over and over and over and over and over again. Because it's like, if you're an artist and you're working on a piece of music, a book, a painting, sculpture, whatever, it's the process, the practice of the thing. It's not necessarily the output, because once you get there, you just start over. You're making more, you're not just making one thing. Your whole career is based on an output of many, many objects or many books, many works of writing. It's not just one thing. Or sometimes people do get into a trap of feeling like they're not going to be able to live up to the quality of the work that they produced last, which is crazy. That's not a good place to be in psychologically. It is such a profound limiting belief about yourself. And it also attaches so much meaning to that one thing. There is no such thing as perfect. People who tend to pursue perfection are living in a state of paralysis with very little forward momentum. Life is not about stagnation. Life is about momentum, creating experiences and opportunities for yourself and the world to engage with. Ooh, crazy lizard. And the more we focus on that as the process, as the catalyst for enjoyment, for doing hard things, for stimulating us, it's not about the finish line. It's about enjoying. It's about rewiring the way you look at every task, every challenge, every opportunity, but really sinking your teeth into it. You know, like this podcast, it's part of my process, the walk, the journey, the experience, the nature. I go back, I edit it, write a description, publish it, cue it up. But then, ooh, what's happening here? %1 battery. All right, so sorry about that. My battery died and I did not bring a second one with me. It is what it is. That's what FlowState is all about, in a way. Not giving too much weight, as we were just talking about, to the end result, more about the process and the consistency over time, showing up, doing the thing. And that's where I will leave you in this moment today along the Atlantic coast in North Tenerife. Thanks so much for dropping into this bizarre episode, cutting out, and have a great week. If there was benefit to this episode, please do me a favor, subscribe, engage with the content, drop me a comment, let me know what you think, where you're from, what challenges are currently prevalent in your life in this moment. I'm here to serve. Till next time, have an amazing week. See you, everybody.